welcome to VC Fluency Session 8, Pricing Around. If you recall, last session we went primarily from the operator perspective. We looked at typical operator equity, personal exit calculation, and exit taxes and tidbits. This goes back to the perspective of the investor. However, I will tie in some components that matter from the operator perspective. So first topic today is investor desired ownership. 2 is pre and post money review. And 3 is 2 different price per share calculations. So in terms of VC ownership by archetype, there are some trends you can see. So for the micro VCs, the hustlers, these smaller funds, they have less capital available. So they want to make sure each bet matters to them. So they do tend to want to get significant ownership in a round. So this looks like getting like 1 million on like a 5 million pre-money and like a pre-seed or a seed deal. This is not always possible since oftentimes the hustlers don't have the same reputation as other funds, but that does tend to be their goal. For niche VCs, they're almost always followers in a round, so they just take what they can get when someone else is leading the round, and they tend to have defined benchmarks on like how much they can invest, and they'll just take whatever percentage they can get in a round. The Ivy League VCs, they can be a little bit all over the place, but a game they can play is they're able to take less ownership in order to drive up the price, and that makes them more competitive to the founders, since founders tend to like when their deals are valued more highly, because that means the founder gets more of the company. Oftentimes, like a Sequoia or an Andreessen, both of them are actually infamous for this. They'll write some crazy valuation for the round, get in, and then later subsequent rounds, they might try to get more ownership since they're already in the round. We talked about this already, but just revisiting, looking at some benchmarks, right? It's 20% again is the average, but just pointing out that Series A seems to be more like 22%. Series B tends to be more like 18%. Reviewing pre and post money, very important, very simple, but can trip you up. So chart here, pre-money is how much a company is valued before, how much funding is raised, and the post money is those two summed. Something that's often used in VC vernacular is this like 3 on 12. So she raised 3 on 12. So they're just omitting words, but what this translates to is like she raised $3 million on 12 million pre-money. Therefore, 3 plus 12 equals 15 million post-money. So now thinking about price per share. So first things up, it is arbitrary at first. You just pick up price per share, right? Because it's proportions that matters. So very commonly, the first price per share you'll select is 0.01. Could be 0.1, could be 0.001. It actually doesn't matter because the proportions of the company is what matters. What this drives is how easy or hard the math is. It's a really simple calculation as well, very simple formula. Like the investment amount is price per share times number of shares, right? So if you think about it, number of shares times price per shares, investment amount. And you can rearrange this, right? So number of shares equals investment amount divided by price per share. That works as well. And here are some examples. 3 million invested equals 0.01 price per share times 300 million shares. And this becomes important since oftentimes you only have 2 pieces of information when you're doing some math, or oftentimes you only have 1 piece of information. You need to do an assumption for the rest. So first question, going back to that 3 on 12 example. So founder raised 3 million on 12 million pre-money. So it's 15 million posts. How many shares are there if the price per share is 0.01? This one's pretty easy. Just 15 million, which is the number of shares divided by the price per share equals the total number of shares, 1.5 billion. So now for a trickier one, and here we're going back to that operator exit analysis and talk through how I got these numbers. We're going to do a slightly different example, and we're going to pretend we don't know the new investor price. We don't know the new investor shares. All we know is that there's a new investor and throwing 40 million in the company. And I'm doing this purposely because, especially if you're not a VC, you're not a founder, oftentimes when you see these different headline news, all you're going to really see is the investor raise, and that's it, right? And so I'm thinking about an operator, and they know how much has been raised in the next round, and you're trying to figure out what your new ownership is. So what matters here is this new fundraise, right? It's $40 million. You have the prior number of shares, which is this 2.7 mil number. And here's where the assumption comes in. We're going to assume that the new investors receive 18% of the company. 18% because it's Series B, if you remember the data we went over before. And it's an assumption, right? So the application of this 18% is something we're going to review in the next lecture. For now, I'm just going to say you can use ChatGPT. That is because it's an algebra problem, right? You have the current number of shares. The new investors get 18% of the company in terms of the new shares that are created. So it's not just 18% of the prior shares, right? It's 18% including the new shares. So that is a little bit of a tricky, not too tricky. It's a plug and chug, but it is a bit of a tricky problem we'll go over later. But skipping over that logic, saying you use ChatGPT, new total shares are this 3.4 mil number. And the new investor gets 18% of that, which is the 605,376 number. So now we apply the price per share calculation, right? So here we have the investment amount, and we have the number of shares. So therefore, we rearrange this. Price per share is equal to 40 million divided by the number of shares. And then we get this $66.07 number. And then now this can be used, and we'll review this in the next course in terms of like thinking through how to do the cap table. It can also be used in terms of thinking through what the new ownership is as an operator, as a founder, and thinking through like what an exit looks like to you as an operator. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining. VC Fluency 8 done.